Hi, welcome to my journey. Okay, I had a couple people come for me. And that's cool. Because if there's a problem, I'm a problem solver. Okay? Let me tell you something. People are so damaged out there that they are constantly projecting the worst and the most cruelest type of allegations on people that they don't know. They don't even know the circumstances, but they can open up their mouth and show just how damaged they are. Hold on, let's talk about it. Oh my goodness. I'm sitting up here trying to figure out how old is a person that needs to put this type of signage outside on the yard, wishing them happy birthday. Oh, is it Sagittarius season? Hold on. I'm going to tell you, when I first saw the signage, I'm like, oh, maybe it's somebody just becoming a teenager, right? You know, the rite of passage, or you know what I'm talking about. But let me go by here so you can really check this out. Right? Because the neighborhood don't know these people. But let's find out. Let's find out. I want to see if they happen to say how old they are. I don't see any age. Nope. I didn't see a single age out there, but I'm telling you, the only thing that would make me feel good about something like that is, you know, if this person is becoming like a teenager, or I don't know. I think if it was that Spanish thing where the women, when they get like 15 years old, you know, kind of like celebrating that she's entering into womanhood or something like that. Okay. Or I mean, you can celebrate every single day if you want to. I don't care, because, you know, there's been times that I have celebrated my birthday like for 3 whole months straight. I mean, I celebrated it. You know, I wasn't doing no decorations and going, you know, all out in my neighborhood letting people know, hey, it's my birthday. No. Right? Because sometimes you just might get your feelings hurt. You might. Because there are people out there who might figure, they'll tell you, they don't give a damn that you was born. They don't care that you were born today. Okay? Now, getting back to what I was talking about earlier. What I was talking about earlier was, you know, you'll have damaged people say things without even doing any research, right? Without doing any research. Why do I say that? Because my situation is my dogs had free range roaming throughout the house. The only place they couldn't go was upstairs, because I have a problem with stairs and I can't go up and, you know, clean up or monitor what the hell they doing up there, so they can't go up there, right? But, you know, when it was just me and Snoopy, right? Snoopy's been my dog for going on 20 years. Okay? She's been my dog going on 20 years. She has always had free range. I never never once even tried to get her pregnant and sell her puppies. No, she has never been pregnant, never had any puppies. Now, when we got this puppy, it was like an adoption. And I told her, I said, hey, we get to adopt. You may not have had, your own puppies, but you're going to be able to have a puppy that's the same species as you, a pitty, without even being pregnant. Right? And I'm trying to explain to her that this is great, right? And, at first, she was really reluctant. She was salivating all over the place, I don't know what that was about. But she stopped the salivation, right? But like I said, she's doing more of what the smaller pitty does rather than training the smaller pitty. My whole thing is in my head that she's supposed to be training the smaller pitty, right? Because she's 20 years old. Believe it or not, she's a big dog. A lot of dogs don't last that long. Okay? But she did. And she's still here. She's still here. Okay? And like I said, I've given them free rein, right? And I'm like, okay, this is a puppy, I'm going to put the training pads down. We're going to try to give them, some kind of structure, something, to let the pitty know that this is where you go poop, this is where you pee, it's on the training pads in the house. Outside, you can go wherever you want to. I'm going to praise you. Okay? So, I started noticing that even with the doors are open, right? The doors are open. Now, Snoopy, there was a time that, she will, shit in the house. Normally when she would shit in the house is because she was not happy about something. And I know you're like, how do you know that? Well, because, for instance, like, I have a patio door that I keep open when we're at home. The patio door is open. It's a covered patio, right? So she can go out there and utilize the patio area and take a shit or a piss, and it's covered, right? The backyard and the side yard doesn't really have a cover, right? You're gonna get wet. So when it's raining, and especially when it's lightning and thundering, I already know, she's scared. She's scared to go outside. She's scared of lightning and thunder. Matter of fact, she's scared of loud banging noises, right? That's why, holidays like the 4th of July or the New Year's, we stay at home, and I have to make sure she stays calm, and realizes that she's not in any kind of danger, because that's the fear that she exhibits. Okay? And at first, when she was like young and she was reacting, which is probably about 10, 15 years ago, right? And she was like, 90 pounds running around the house because she was scared. Yeah, you got to alleviate her fears. I'm telling you. Okay? So anyway, the journey is I've been walking the pitties, okay? Now, Snoopy, she can't walk very far for very long without getting exhausted. Now, the puppy is just getting warmed up at 200, 300 yards. Okay? And that puppy is running all around both of us. And I have stated several times on my video how, I get wrapped up in the leash, right? Now, I'm 64 years old. I'm fairly healthy, right? And I definitely always, try to drink my daily milk, okay? Make sure I have enough calcium. But let me tell you something. I have suffered menopause, right? I have suffered menopause, and I don't know, just how damaging menopause was or is on my bones. Okay? Now, I wish, they had a machine, that I could just, get a 3D image of my bones. However, I can't even afford fucking medical, right? After my layoff from my upper lower class job, right? What is that? Upper lower class. Upper lower class is where you're making about 40,000 to like 75,000 as a single person, right? That's the upper lower class job. Right? And a lot of y'all don't know that because y'all are not aware of economics. Y'all probably never taken the economics class. Right? Because you have your macros and then you have your micros economics. On a macro level, $50,000, $60,000 a year is upper lower class. Okay, calm down, Cherie, calm down. You keep trying to educate these people. These people, are sensitive. They're sensitive. You might trigger their emotions and they won't be able to hear a thing you say. Okay. Hold on. Now, if you're making minimum wage, right? And if you're making under 23,000, you are considered in poverty. You're impoverished, right? And this is what they've done to our senior citizens, right? They have made sure that our senior citizens, our people on disability, and our children remain impoverished. Why? Because they're not making 23,000 each, right? They think it's funny to sit up there and say, oh, well, at least one person in the household is making 23,000 and above, right? They don't care how much, because the next gap between poverty and lower middle class is fucking 60,000. Once you get at 75,000, then you once, like, if you're at 60,000, you are still in the bracket of upper lower class. To me, you have to understand that each sector has the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay? Or 3 deacons, or lower class, in the middle, and upper class. Right? So, I know I lost so many of you people right then. So let me get back on track. So, if you have been watching my videos, since we had gotten the puppy is doing all kinds of things to amuse herself while we're out taking a walk. Right? Now, I understand, I have some understanding, because when we had taken the walk before, I had to carry her because she was a baby. She was a baby. Okay? But now, she's like, she kind of getting there on a toddler basis. Right? Because she's 4 months. Right? Maybe, we'll have a section of, where, that she'll become like this tween, right? And then she's gonna get into this rebellious teenage years, right? A year or so, right? I'm hoping she doesn't go that route. I'm hoping that she'll become like a cooperative, happy teenager rather than a rebellious teenager. That has to be curtailed at this time. Otherwise, she will become a rebellious teenager. What happens to rebellious teenagers? Right? You can either teach them the discipline at home, or society's going to teach them the discipline. We see a lot of people out here who was not given the discipline at home. Why? Because these people were emotionally manipulative with their parents or whoever their guardian was, making them feel like they didn't love you if you didn't get spoiled, right? Because you mad that you can see somebody else over there getting spoiled. They got 2 parents, or they might be born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and you trying to tell your parents how are they going to prove to you that they're proper parents to you. You're going to judge your own parents. That's your first mistake. Your first mistake is you don't judge your parents. You can try to negotiate with your parents. Now, if you got parents that are so stressed out that they can't even hear what you're saying, then you try to get your friends or your friends' parents to mediate your message that you're trying to get across to your parents. Right? But some of you don't try to do that. Instead, you try to move in at your friend's house because you see your friend is living good, right? And understandably, if it's a temporary situation, ain't nobody gonna have hard feelings. However, it's just a matter of time where somebody is going to feel like, this situation is not fair, even though all of these measures have been put in place to try to make it seem like it's fair, right? So, let me give you an example. I was watching this lady who was like, oh, my adult child, she's living with me, and but she has a young friend that's still in high school, and her whole family is dysfunctional, and so they're trying to have it to where this minor is able to come and stay with them, right? They're going through, I would say, alternative means in order to make that happen, right? Because the child is pretty much almost a full-fledged adult, right? Because they're like 17, right? So at best, you're talking about maybe even a year maximum before this person becomes an adult, right? And I know y'all were like, yeah, that sounds great, right? But here's the thing. When somebody looks over the fence and says, hey, mom, dad, you didn't used to let me do that. Why are you letting them do that? Right? I know that because even my daughter, right? And I told her, she used to be mad. You should have had my sister when we could have had fun together. I said, no, I couldn't. She was like, why not? I said, because I wanted each of you to feel like you were a solo dolo single child, right? Because I know how hard it is, to make people feel like they're treated fairly while at the same time taking under consideration their individuality. It's very hard. You cannot treat people fairly and treat them like an individual at the same time. Unless, no, you just can't. Not even identical twins. An identical twin will be upset that you would make the assumption that just because that they are a twin, that they feel the same way that their twin does about everything. Or you think that if you give one of the twins attention, that's a benefit for both of the twins. And we have the tendency to do something like that. Like, we'll see people that are, together, and we assume that if we talk to one, and we make a gesture like we're talking to all of them, right? And that's going to be okay. But it's not. It's not okay. All right? It's not. You have to talk to each and every individual alone by themselves, eye to eye. So, before I had the opportunity to put into place where I could treat each of my pets as an individual, the puppy is like, no. Nobody's being treated like an individual. We're all going to be together. We're going to love it. Right? But we're not loving it. We're not. Right? Like I said, Snoopy's not loving the fact that this puppy, will chomp down on her leash and causing her choker to choke her. I'm not loving the fact that she's running all over the place, pulling me this way, pulling me that way. And when she's not pulling me this way or pulling me that way, then she's tying up my legs because she loves to go behind me. Right? And that was put in one of my videos. I'm like, typically, I would have dogs that would walk in front of me. Rarely did they ever go behind me. But this dog here likes to go all around me, right? She goes in, she comes up from behind, and the next thing you know, I have to step over the leash or I'm going to get tied up and end up tripping and falling. Now, getting back to what I was talking about, I'm 64 years old. Tripping and falling is no joke, right? We're not resilient. We don't bounce back. Okay? We could really hurt ourselves falling down after the age of 60, depending on how strong you are. Now, I am pretty strong, right? But I'm not going to play around, right? Because I fell down twice already because of her leash being wrapped around, my feet. And even Snoopy got out of hand where she decides, she almost tug of wars me down to the ground because she's going to run after a cat. Things that she ain't did in the past. Like I said, I have history with Snoopy. She's been with me for 20 years. She ain't acted this foolish until now. And then that last little bit where Gracie runs to go look at, goes and to go greet, these four boys who has a German Shepherd mix, and then Snoopy, she gets in defense mode, and the next thing you know, I lose control of the leashes completely, glasses go flying off, phone goes flying somewhere, and we're all running after these dogs, hoping it doesn't escalate into some kind of, hospitalization for any of the dogs, or that they will actually bite, right? So I'm thinking to myself, what is going on here? What is going on? And this is all before I had the chance to start, separating my pets, right? Because it was in my mind to eventually start separating the pets, to start walking them separately. Both of them are very possessive, very jealous, and like I said, I do wish, I could have had more time before they escalated to this level so that I would have been able to walk them separately, and develop an individual type of relationship and be able to also maintain an individual relationship even though we're all together, because that's important, right? That's why you would hear sometimes where I'll say, oh my gosh, these pitties think like they're running things, right? Because they bonded together and decided that, I was in the minority, right? And I'm like, yeah, I may be in the minority, but I am the master. And I know even that statement will trigger some of you people. Okay? Because you're traumatized. You're suffering from some type of, victimization. To the point where you want somebody to say, oh, I'm the guardian of my pets. Or maybe you want somebody to say, this is my best friend. And I take care of my best friend, even when my best friend is complicated. Right? That's what you want because you're traumatized. It would make you feel better. And you don't even know how many people will sit up there in their minds will say, fuck your feelings. We don't care how you sit up there and say, oh, what makes us human is our feelings. No, everybody has feelings. What makes us human is our intelligence. And you're not using yours. So,